Hey guys, so for this week's video, we're talking about the basic chemistry of cells. So to sum it all up, we talk about mostly the four different types of macromolecules there are. So there's carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So with that being said, let's go right into this video. Biolist. So today's topic is about the basic chemistry of cells. So what is the basic chemistry of cells? Most of the activities of the cell involve chemical changes made, whether it's small molecules joined together to form larger ones or complex substances being broken down into smaller units. Materials are changed from one form to another, used up, or synthesized, which means put together during biochemical activities that take place in cells. So there are elements present in which they form essential compounds together that is utilized by the cell. So the basic chemistry of cells is it just says the definition in the statement. It's the chemistry of cells, and it shows the things smaller than cells. So here we have a picture. Cells, and then we have organelles, which are the specialized structures. And we also talked about subatomic particles, protons, electrons, neutrons, and we talked about atoms, the basic unit of matter. And then molecules are when two or more atoms are combined. So the only one we haven't talked about is macromolecules, and that's mainly what we're talking about today in terms of basic chemistry for cells. All right. Inorganic versus organic compounds. So the compounds are needed for the cell, which are formed from the elements, can be inorganic compounds or organic compounds. So inorganic compounds are compounds that do not have the elements carbon and hydrogen in the chemical combination. For example, they come in great percentages in cells like water, mineral salts, inorganic acids like hydrochloric acid, and bases. And then we have organic compounds. So the main stuff are underlined if you couldn't tell the differences. So these are compounds that contain the elements carbon and hydrogen. So in inorganic compounds, they do not contain carbon and hydrogen, while in organic, they do. So these are produced by plants and animals and also can be synthesized, put together in laboratories as well. So the four types of organic compounds, which we will talk about today, are the macromolecules of the cell, and they're called carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. All right, so here's just a picture showing that. So this is a cell and the chemistry within it. We have our macromolecules, proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and then our nucleic acids, DNA, RNA. And then this is showing the catalyst and it using the energy that the cell receives and making energy for our bodies. All right, so now going on to organic compounds. Okay, so what are macromolecules? We talked about this before, but let's just re-clarify. So it simply means large molecules. Macro is large, and molecules we know is two atoms combined together. So large molecules are lipids, proteins, nucleic acids, and carbohydrates. So here is a picture showing that. And the reason why it's a macromolecule is because it's a large molecule. It has lots of different chemical elements combined together to make it a compound. So a monomer is when we have just one molecule, while a polymer is made out of many small molecules. So we can all agree that these are all polymers because they all have many small molecules. All right, so first up we have carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are organic compounds that include all sugars and starches. So these contain the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And living things use them mainly for energy. So all sugars and starches are built from the basic unit of glucose, which is a monosaccharide. So monosaccharide is a single sugar made of 3 to 7 carbons. And examples of monosaccharides are glucose, galactose, and fructose. So then we have monosaccharides, and mono means one, just a good way to remember. So monosaccharides may combine chemically to form disaccharides. Di is 2, so a double sugar. This undergoes dehydration synthesis. So this is when two molecules of single sugars are combined and a molecule of water is produced in addition to the disaccharide. So examples of this are sucrose, maltose, and lactose. And with living cells, many monosaccharides are chemically combined to form complex carbohydrates. so a lot of polymers, known as polysaccharides. Poly is many. So examples of these are cellulose, starch, and chitin. Cellulose is found in plant cells, so that's a very common example. Okay, so here's a picture showing the different monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides we talked about. Here are examples for monosaccharides: glucose, fructose, galactose, maltose, sucrose, lactose, and then starch, glycogen, cellulose, chitin. Many examples. So polysaccharides are when we have many sugars, disaccharides are 2, and mono is one. So here's a chemical picture of showing it of a polysaccharide. You can see it has many molecules, so it's a polymer for that reason. This is a monomer because that's only one, and disaccharide has 2. All right, so next we have lipids. Lipids are organic compounds that include fat and fat-like substances. They also contain the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen like carbohydrates. But however, unlike carbohydrates, lipid molecules are made of 2 basic units: an alcohol, which is usually glycerol, and a class of compounds called fatty acids. So one molecule of glycerol, or the alcohol, is chemically joined to 3 molecules of fatty acid, so a 1-to-3 ratio. So we use lipids to store energy. In carbohydrates, we use it mainly for energy. Here we use it to store energy. And lipids are also major components of cell membranes in living things. So here we have a picture showing that basically this is a hydrophilic head, so it is attracted to water, and a hydrophobic tail, so it does not like water. That's why you can see how it's always in the inside, so it doesn't have to have any interaction with water. And most types of lipids that we see of are fats and oils, like here, cheese, butter, milk, chocolate, stuff like that. All right, so here is a picture showing the types of fatty acids we have. So we have a saturated fatty acid and an unsaturated fatty acid. So saturated fatty acids they have single bonds between carbon atoms. So as a result, because of that, the carbon atoms are bonded to many hydrogen atoms as possible. In other words, the carbon atoms are saturated with the hydrogen atoms. So because of that, these fatty acids are found in fats, and these are the unhealthy ones we know of. While unsaturated fats, you can say, are unsaturated, so they are healthy ones. They have at least one double bond between carbon atoms. As a result, some carbon atoms are not bonded with hydrogen atoms, so they're unsaturated, and these hydrogen atoms are found in oils. Okay, so next we have proteins. So proteins are organic compounds that are the most diverse and numerous from the 4 main macromolecules. Some of the functions include making up tissue components of muscle, regulating life processes, and helping defend against infections. So it also contains the elements carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and then nitrogen and sulfur. So those are the 2 new ones. So one example of a protein is hemoglobin, which carries materials throughout the body, transport protein. So they're made from building blocks known as amino acids. Proteins are made from building blocks known as amino acids. And there are actually 20 different kinds of amino acids that we know of in our body, and in which 9 are essential. So all organisms need proteins to survive. We already know that. So a protein molecule is made from 1 or more chains of amino acids. So like carbohydrates, if 2 amino acids join chemically together, instead of disaccharides, they're called dipeptides. So polypeptides are when many amino acid groups, so many chains of amino acids are joined together. So here's just a picture showing the different proteins we know of: nuts, beans, eggs. Broccoli isn't a protein, but it's still very healthy. Seafood, things like that. So here's a photo showing what we just talked about in the previous slide. So an amino acid is the basic unit of a protein. So glycine is an example of one that's in our body. And a protein example is hemoglobin, which is a transport protein, and it's when many amino acids are joined together. So here we have this good visual picture. Amino acids are just the basic unit of protein, and then when they're joined together, they make a peptide, and then many peptides are polypeptides, and then we have a protein, which is many peptides together. All right, so nucleic acids is the last of the 4 macromolecules, and these are organic compounds that help mostly in genetic code and heredity. which is essential to us to make new offspring. So these contain the elements carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, which is common in all the four macromolecules, and then we have nitrogen and phosphorus. Phosphorus is the new one. So nucleic acids include things like, DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA, ribonucleic acid. So the single unit of a nucleic acid is called a nucleotide. These consist of chains of small molecules which are held together by covalent bonds. So each nucleotide consists of one phosphate group, which contains phosphorus and oxygen. That's where you get the name phosphate from, and that's PH4, PO4, where I don't know where I got the H, but PO4. And then number 2 is a sugar, which is deoxyribose in DNA and ribose in RNA. And then we have one of the 4 nitrogen-containing bases, which I'll explain on the next slide. So here's just a picture showing that. Every nucleotide has a phosphate group, a sugar, and nitrogenous base. So this is kind of what I was talking about, the 4 bases. So we have adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. So they are paired together, and together they make a sugar-phosphate backbone. So adenine always pairs with thymine, and guanine always pairs with cytosine. And a good mnemonic to remember for DNA, which is the one we mostly talk about, is a trait could grow. Adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, guanine. Either doesn't really matter. So in DNA, it's like this. In RNA, instead of thymine, we have uracil. That's just the only difference. Adenine, guanine, and cytosine are still the same. So those are the 4 bases. And now just for a little mini quiz. So question 1, which of the following are not one of the 4 macromolecules? The answer is C, polymer. So polymer is when we have many molecules joined together, but it's not a macromolecule. Number 2, true or false? In macromolecules, macro is small. The answer is B, false. Macro is large molecules. Number 3, which of the following is an example of a carbohydrate? So the answer is C, milk and cereal. These are starches. So milk is not, but cereal is. So just focus me on the cereal part. So hemoglobin is a protein, cytosine is a nucleic acid, or part of a nucleic acid, and fats from animals are lipids. So this one had to be correct. Ignore the milk. The milk is just part of there, but cereal is the starch of the carbohydrate. Number 4, what is a polypeptide? So the answer is a polypeptide is when many amino acid groups, so many amino acid chains, are joined together. And amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. Number 5, how many molecules does a monomer have? So the answer is A. It just has one. Mono means one. So monomer has one and polymer has many. All right, number 6, true or false? Inorganic compounds do not contain the elements hydrogen and carbon. That is true. They do not contain the elements hydrogen and carbon, while organic compounds do. So those are just the questions. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and give this video a big thumbs up. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye!